Good evening and welcome to the in Hungary. My name is Gareth, otherwise known as Captain Stiff. You can find me on Twitter at ghall_89 and on to the Hungaroring, 30 minutes southeast of Budapest. A beautiful 4.38 kilometre, that's 2.72 mile track, the 15th longest circuit on the F1 calendar. The guys will be doing a 610 metre stretch from pole down to turn 1. The longest straight being 908 metres, that's the start finish line. The drivers today will be doing a full throttle for around 45 to 55% of the lap, depending on the weather conditions. But if we get in a dry race, it's most likely going to be around 55%. So well over half the lap they will be doing full throttle. So a lot of tricky corners going around Budapest going around Hungaroring can catch even the best of drivers out at times. So we'll go in here, we'll see what the weather is for qualifying, just waiting for the final two guys to log into the session. The circuit here, 14 turns. It looks like we're going to get a dry qualifying session around Hungary. Not particularly famous Eastern European middle of summer, so it's usually beautiful sunshine, beautiful weather, so it looks like we're being treated to that today around the Hungaroring. The guys will be doing gear changes around 48 per lap, so over the 50% race that's just about 1690 gear changes, so another good finger workout for the guys on those shifting paddles. 14 turns with some pretty tricky corners, such as going into turn 4, which the drivers can find themselves being caught out with running wide, especially during qualifying, might find themselves invalidating their laps. So around turn 4 can be tricky, but also turn 6 and 7 in front of the grandstand at the tight chicane, the curbs there can really throw a car out of balance, and with such raised curbs you can see cars bouncing over them and losing all downforce, and you might even see a couple of cars facing in the wrong direction. That doesn't count out the 8, 9, 10, 11, the sweeping section as they go through sector 2, which can be really tricky. Is if you're out of sync for the first corner, it'll really throw the car out of position and you'll find yourself struggling throughout the whole of the second sector. So the guys today, they've got to make sure they hook up that second sector to get the best lap time possible. Because we're on board here watching Boy Better Know SB in the Sauber. Of course, Scott, that is, won the race on track last week out in Japan, but unfortunately lost the race on penalties to Game of the Best, who was within the 6 seconds that Scott had picked up over the session. So Scott not overly happy with his performance about picking up those penalties. He will definitely look to bounce back today with a good result around the Hungaroring. As he just finishes off his outlap period, he's coming around that long, seems to never end, that final turn onto the main straight, opens up the DRS. We're on board here with Scott as he flies down that 908 metre straight, hard braking into turn 1, locks up the front left corner, and then you go on to the second little straight here as DRS. Your little DRS zone doesn't give you too much drag, so he locks the front left there once again, and it's all about kissing the apex as you cut just nicely touch the outside curb, and this is where it can get tricky. You can really catch out there as he doesn't want to go too wide. He just did put all 4 wheels over the white line there, so we'll see if that's a validated lap by the end of this lap. But it might be there as he gets through the chicane, hits the curbs a little bit hard on the inside or the first turn. Now this is that tricky sweeping section in sector 2 I was talking about. It seems to be that the Sauber's relatively planted through it, so a good second sector there for Skelton. We'll see if that running wide into the turn 4 has compromised his lap, and whether he will have set a validated lap. Out on the super soft tyres at the moment, so decent grip levels for him as he goes round the final corner. That's turn 14 and across the line, and it's a 1:21.3 there for Scott. So we've got a yellow in sector 1, and it's the second Sauber of Game of the Best. So as Joel goes on top with a 1:19.4, so absolutely annihilates Scott's first lap. Stifler 1980, after missing last week's race, goes on to the first row of the grid in second position with 120 in the Ferrari, currently just coming up to complete the lap, but he bails in, so he's going to abort that lap. Let's go on board here with current championship leader Nicky 9095, only leading the championship by 1 point at the moment, so the championship battle going down to the wire as it seems to be, is with 3 races to go after this one. The top 5 only split by 6 points, so absolute nail biter for Nicky, who's done well to hold on to his lead as Nicky comes round turn 13. That, as you see there, the Sauber behind running offline as Nicky comes down the final corner. That's turn 14. Straighten the car up as early as possible, open that DRS, goes across the line, and Nicky goes on the front row of the grid with 120.5. So currently Joel V520 on pole by over a second to Nicky, so an absolute barnstormer of a lap there for Joel, who's absolutely thrown it around as game of the best, has a real scrappy lap there with 140.8, so 20 seconds down. So you'll definitely see that improve over time. As we see Mero here. Mero's currently just entering the second sector. He's just coming up to turn 6 and 7 at the chicane. A little bit slow through the entry and compromised his exit. He now enters that sweeping section. You see it runs wide there, just kicks the rear end out, and that's going to have lost him probably around half a second there. So we'll look to see if Mero actually stays with this lap. He's run over onto the curbing, onto the runoff area there. So definitely a scrappy lap here for Mero, who picked up 3rd position last week and a good podium, his first podium of the season. So we'll be looking to improve on that. As does he come into the pit lane? No, he stays with the lap. So Mero D2 coming around the final corner at turn 14. Get that DRS open as early as possible, and he's going to cross the line, and he puts it in 5th with a 120 flat, or 121 flat. So not the best lap for Mero, who finds himself around a second and a half slower than Joel, who's on pole at the moment. So really, I think what they're doing at the moment is showing just how good that lap was for Joel, who was really locked in and was game of the best, who does set a second lap. He does a 119.9, so still half a second behind Joel. So game of the best, the form driver at the moment, has won the last 3 races of the season. Even he's struggling to get within half a second of Joel. And the Hungarian Grand Prix, first held officially in 1986 and won by Nelson Piquet. He's currently just signed a new contract to be on the F1 calendar until 2026, after it was resurfaced a few years ago. It's always provided fun races in the past, and different winners here are definitely frequent, with 17 different winners in the 33 races that have been held here. There's only been a couple, I believe it's 5 drivers have ever won the race consecutively, so you usually see a lot of different races each year around. As looks like we may have lost Mike there, who's retired from the session. So Mike unfortunately looks to have lost it coming out of the 3rd corner as they go up the hill, so may have run a little bit wide coming out of turn 3 and just kicked it into the barrier. Looks like he's picked up front wing damage there, and instead he's deciding to start at the back of the grid on the tyres that he chooses. And unfortunately for Mike, that is the end of his qualifying session, as Jamie 6328 here coming around the final corner, and we'll see he is to start his lap. So Jamie here now the first person to go out and start what will be his first timed lap, but he is one of only 2 people to not have set a timed lap so far. But the drivers, as I was saying before, the drivers that have won it consecutive are Hamilton, who's won it in 2012 and 2013, Mika Häkkinen in 99 and 2000, Jacques Villeneuve in 96 and 97, Ayrton Senna in 91, 92, and Nelson Piquet in its inaugural race in 86, and then won it the next year in 87. It's actually the first Grand Prix win for several drivers, and many that have gone on to be world champions. Of Jenson Button, Fernando Alonso and Damon Hill all won their first Grand Prix at the Hungarian Grand Prix, and the only other driver that didn't go on to be a world champion was Heikki Kovalainen in the McLaren for his only season at the McLaren team, where he picked up the Hungarian Grand Prix Winners' Trophy. Pole position here can be crucial. overtaking is not easy around this circuit. You use your best overtaking options are around the first sector, down into the first corner, and then down into turn 3 at the end of the second DRS zone. Apart from that, it's not particularly an overtaking circuit. You don't find that many places where you can throw it up, as Jamie goes onto the second row of the grid with a 120.3 there, so a good time in the Williams. As you see there behind him, cars starting to stream out the pit lane as they start coming around to start their final laps. As Stifler 1980, currently in 5th place, will be in the session left remaining. Now, a pit stop here can cost you around 20 seconds. It's not the longest pit lane. The only issue of this the pit lane is the entry, where you have to make sure you get it or slow down nice and early, because there is that solid Armco barrier onto the left hand side of the pit entry. So you've got to make sure that you don't want to pick up any unwanted front wing damage of just clipping the Armco as you come into the pit lane. And as I said, there are 2 DRS zones, one into turn 1 down the main straight and a second down into turn 2 at the second smaller hairpin. As we see here, Stifler just going through the chicane as he enters the sweeping section. It's all about keeping this car on track. He does run over the rumble strips a little bit there. That may have unbalanced the car going slightly. He looks like he's kept it on the black stuff nicely. Gets it slowed down just in time for turn 12 as he comes up to turn 13. Does he get held up by the traffic in front of the Williams? He doesn't want to get caught in any dirty air, but what he will do is he'll get a little bit of drag, a little bit of slipstream as he crosses the line, and Stifler 1980 goes 3rd with a 120.3, so puts his Haas on the second row of the grid at the moment. But we will see with everyone else on track at the moment, apart from Mike, who retired earlier in the session, we'll all see who is able to better their lap. So we'll just look at Game of the Best here, who's, like I said, won the previous 3 races. Definitely the man to beat at the moment. Man in form in the Sauber, as he's got half a second to catch up to Joel V520. We'll just have a look at his timing here as he crosses. It's a 39.9 for the second sector, so it's going to have to be a quick end to the lap for him to challenge Joel. As he exits turn 13 there, get a full throttle power down into turn 14, takes it nicely. It's going to straighten the car up pretty nicely for the final straight, and he crosses the line. He's not going to improve. So in fact, there was a bit of a scruffy lap by the looks of it. He must have messed up earlier in the first section, but he did cross the line just in time to get a new tyre or get another lap in. So we'll see if he's got fuel enough to put a fast lap in. As Mero D2 currently in second position, it's coming around the end of the second sector at the moment. Mero D2 currently going 0.2 of a second faster, so that will only put him a 10th behind Joel if he can keep this up. So Joel's time, with Joel going across the line as Stifler retires from the session after currently sitting in 4th. As Mero D2's got a chance, a little bit wiggly coming out there. Does he go across the line? No, he doesn't improve his time. So well, he does improve his time, but he doesn't move up. It's just over a 10th behind. The Game of the Best looks to have enough fuel to attack another lap, and he is. He's coming into turn 13 at the moment. Now we'll see. He's not had the best of time in qualifying over the last 2 races. He's been qualifying off of the front row of the grid, which means he's had work to do. Has he locked it up any better? It looks like it's a little bit of a better lap. It is still 3rd position for Game of the Best. So Joel V520 will pick up pole position in the Williams with a 119.4. Mero D2 with another great qualifying result in the Red Bull with 119.5, just under a 10th of a second slower. Game of the Best in the Sauber was in 3rd, joined by Stifler's Haas. Jamie 6328 picks up 5th place, with Nicky 9095 in 6th. Scott takes 7th and iMakers in 8th. Craig and Mike will make up the final row of the grid. Craig taking a grid penalty, so may have got himself into a bit of bother earlier in the session, picks up a grid penalty, but fortunately for him, the fact that there are only 10 drivers in the race means he will only lose one position. So just quickly before the end of the race here, I'll just go through what happened last week out in Japan. So Gamer took the race win. That was his third consecutive win from Scott, who finished in second after having the win taken away by the stewards after penalties. Nicky 9095, our championship leader, crashed out earlier in the session, so what that did was that gave the rest of the grid a real chance of clawing back at Nicky's lead in the championship. And like I said, it's now only 6 points between the top 5 with 4 races left to go. So with this one, and then next week we head to Bahrain, and then USA in Austin, and then the final race of the season will be in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So definitely will have the potential for a last race of the season battle for the title. But with Chill Nyland missing the race tonight, it means that he will lose out when it comes to the guys picking up points around him. These guys here just making sure they've locked in their strategy for today. Looks like we've got beautiful weather for a race today. Clear blue skies. Doesn't look like we've got any clouds around, so the drivers should be able to use their dry setups pretty much perfectly. High speed stability around the circuit is crucial. Some of the corners that Hungarian are deceptively fast, particularly in sector 2. So quite a lot of them are quite long corners with a long apex. So to be quick, the driver needs a compliant car that needs to remain well balanced from corner entry to corner exit. So setups here are really, really vital, and making sure that you keep that car planted as it goes around us. The guys look like they're readying up here, so due to start in around 20 seconds time. I think we'll see a pretty explosive start with these guys going down into turn 1. Will Joel be able to hold off everyone behind him? We've seen Gamer starting from 4th and 5th recently, and by the end of the first lap leading the race. So what happens in the race today? So we go on board here with 5 lights, and we are go in Hungary as the cars release from the grid. And at the back it looks like we've got Joel, who's currently holding position from massive Stifler. They're trying to go down the inside of Mero 2. They get tangled up. The 2 wheels look like they're interlocked there, but luckily Stifler just backs out of it as Mero D2 has moved up into 3rd position. Gamer, the best there, has moved up into 2nd, so a good start there for Gamer. But it is Joel who maintains the lead so far, as the cars all safely make it through the first sector into the very, very quick sweeping left-hander as they head down towards turn 5. In front of the grandstands, they're going down towards the first chicane. Nice and tentative, don't want to throw it in too early, don't hit those curbs and turn the car around. It's Gamer the best here, starting to get into the back of Joel. He's lost 0.2 of a second already, but he's just gained a second there. So a good start for Joel here. We'll see Gamer goes a little bit wide coming out of turn 11. There's seen a McLaren back there going really wide coming out 11. So I think that might have been Nicky 9095. So Nicky down in 7th position at the moment, so we'll definitely look at increasing that. And at the back there you've got Craig 8728, who we welcome back after quite an elongated time out. And Mike SI and iMakers currently making up 8th, 9th and 10th as they go across the line, and it's Joel who leads the pack across the first lap, with Gamer the best sitting just over 7/10 of a second behind him. Merity 2 sitting on the podium as he was last week, starting to look at the back of the Sauber, so the Red Bull will have the advantage around the circuit with the setup and the chassis build up of the car, and he's starting to really hassle the back of the Sauber as we head in to turn 4. Now Mera doesn't want to make any rash moves too early into the race. He wants to make sure that he just stays in the slipstream of that Sauber and just gets the move done when it becomes easiest, and that's probably down the pit straight, down the main straight. This Gamer there just flicks the car in, runs over the rumble strips. He's going to kiss the apex of turn 9, a little bit of a kink of turn 10 into turn 11. Game of the Best starting to come under real attack now from Mero, who's only 0.2 of a second behind him. Starting to look really racy at the start of this race. It's currently the closest battle we've got on circuit at the moment, with Nicky 995 looking at the back of Boy Better No Scott. That is, as Joel crosses the line, sets the fastest lap with 1:22.6. Mero D2 looking at the inside of Gamer going into turn 1, and he gets just up the inside. Does he get the power down early? It's going to be a drag between the Sauber and the Red Bull. It's Ferrari power versus Renault power. Does Gamer stay on the inside? He does. The two bump wheels as they go down through turn 2 into turn 3. And Gamer does well to defend his position and holds on to it. As Gamer the Best there, quite staunchly defending his position, making sure that Mero didn't just launch it out the inside. And what that's done is it's brought Stifler 1980 back into play, and Stifler starting to look at the back of Mero now as they go into the chicane. We'll go down, we'll just briefly look at Nicky 9095, who's looking at the back of Boy Better Know in the Sauber. So you've got the two most underpowered cars on the circuit, the Sauber and the McLaren. Sauber using that Ferrari engine, McLaren Honda. So it's going to be a battle of outright driver pace today between these two, of who's going to get it done. And Scott's had a slightly better end to the lap. He's stretched out that lead to 0.7 of a second. It was 0.3 earlier in the lap. So with DRS now active, these guys going to want to try and stay out of the DRS detection as early or as quick as possible. As Nicky late on the brakes there, as iMakers retires from the session in the pit lane. So another disappointing race for iMakers after his points last week. He would be disappointed. It's a front wing change there for him. So iMakers, another disappointing race for him. So we'll quickly go back on board with Nicky, who's still chasing down Scott. Scott now almost 2.5 seconds behind Jamie, so not seemingly enjoying the start of this race. Maybe holding up the McLaren behind him, and it's going to slowly bring Craig and Mike into play if they can catch up to the back of this battle here. And Scott, this will just go on. I believe everyone here will be on the same tyre apart from Mike, who started on the soft, so slightly different strategy change there for Mike. We'll look to go a little bit longer on those softs. Everyone else on the super softs. So it's just a battle of pure pace between these guys here. We'll just quickly check up on Stifler 1980 as he sits 5 tenths of a second behind Mero D2. He's now got Jamie 6328 in the Williams for company behind him as well. So the 3-car battle for third position at the moment, with Game of the Best stretching his lead out over Mero now after that initial attack to 1.2 seconds, but sitting 2 seconds behind Joel was Nicky 9995. Gets the move down on Scott going down into turn 2, and does Scott try and come back at him? It would be a very brave move going into turn 4 if he was looking at it, as Mero picks up a 3-second time penalty. So nightmare there, as we've got a yellow in sector 2. It's gone very briefly, but looks like it may have been Stifler. It is Stifler, so a nightmare there for Stifler, who is battling at the front for a podium position, and that's going to allow Mike to look at the inside going into the chicane. Stifler just covers him off, but looks like those tyres are not enjoying the heat. He's going to struggle to keep it in a straight line. Everyone knows that as soon as you turn these cars around, the tyres just turn into sheet ice. We'll just quickly go back up. We'll just check Mero D2. A Game of the Best must have made a mistake, as Mero D2 has absolutely cruised up to the back of him. Oh, gets a snap oversteer coming out that final corner, but Mero D2, who was just under a second and a half behind Gamer, now sits just 5 tenths of a second. And once again, that Renault powered Red Bull starting to look at the back of the underpowered Sauber. as Joel's lead at the front is actually coming down. It was sitting at just under 2.5 seconds, now down at just over 1.5 seconds. So Joel now starting to get reeled in by these two guys behind. But of course, as Jamie picks up a 3-second penalty, so that voids Mero's one that he picked up last lap. So at current, it means that Jamie would drop, or he would just about stay ahead of Nicky. But of course, there's a long way left to go in this race, as we'll go back as see that just behind Nicky and Scott still having a cracking battle throughout this lap. Nicky getting the move done earlier in the lap, and Scott just staying in the gearbox of the McLaren, looking at potentially getting the move done in the same position down into turn 1 as Nicky did on him earlier in this lap. As you see here, the Sauber coming round the final corner. That's turn 14. He's going to get the DRS open. Nicky without any DRS. Scott just isn't close enough to get the move done. Locks up both front tyres going into the first corner. He's going to get another kick of DRS going down into turn 2. And there you see the rear flap opening on that rear wing, as he really looks. So Scott looking much better in this first sector compared to Nicky. But Nicky seems to have the handle of him when it comes to the second sector. It's the closest battle on the circuit we have at the moment, just over 0.2 of a second away, as they go down into the chicane at turn 6 and turn 7. The crowd being treated to a real close battle between these two guys. Scott, as Nicky runs wide, and that slightly unbalances Scott there, who's followed his line ever so slightly. And obviously you want to follow your own line, don't want to look at the car ahead. You want to make up for these mistakes that they make, because Scott much closer this lap than he was on Nicky. Does he look at diving down the inside? No, it's going to be close. He does. He gets the move done going into turn 13. So cracking move there for Scott. Already, as they get to the final corner, has got the move done. And a real opportunistic move there for Scott, as Nicky once again gets DRS on him, but doesn't have the same. He's going to get a much better run as Scott gets a little bit sideways coming out of turn 1. That's going to give Nicky a chance of diving down the inside of these two, nose to tail for the first 6 laps of this race. Or for the last 6 laps, I should say. We're in lap 8 at the moment, as Nicky picks up a 3-second time penalty. So running it wide at turn 4, and like I said, as Nicky's it does very well to keep that in a straight line. Rear end just kicked out from behind him as he exited turn 5, and that's going to lose him a big bundle of time. He drops just under a second, or just under a second and a half behind Scott. And that does mean that if Scott can maintain this throughout the rest of the lap, that Nicky will have the disadvantage of not having DRS on him going down. Has managed to get down to within under a second, so he needs to maintain this as they go around the DRS detection line, which is just after this turn 13 corner here. So there's DRS, so Nicky will have it. He's only 0.8 of a second behind, so we'll give him the chance of a lot of drag going down as he gets in the slipstream of the Sauber. Doesn't look like he's going to be close enough to challenge. I am aware up the front that Mero D2 is only 0.7 of a second behind Gamer, who's only a second behind Joel now. So the battle for the lead starting to heat up between those three. Mero D2 starting to find his feet in the season so far, or in the season over the last few races. Has had a little bit of a shaky start with a couple of 9th and 10th finishes in Italy and Great Britain, but with a 3rd last time out and a 4th in the race before that, Mero starting to get a little bit more consistency into his season. As I just missed, Joel must have made a mistake, because Game with the Best has taken the lead and Mero is ahead of him, so Joel now sitting 3 seconds behind the pair of them. So Joel made a mistake out of the lead, and that's going to bring Jamie 6328 into play as well. as Mero D2 is now, instead of looking, oh, once again Mero just drifting around that final corner. Does mean he's lost around 3 or 4 tenths of a second to the Sauber, but it does mean that Mero is now looking at potentially picking up his first win of the season. But it's as you were for the last couple of races with Game of the Best in the lead at the moment, and we know that he's very consistent. You rarely see him make any mistakes, you rarely see him pick up that many penalties as well, so it's going to be really tricky for Mero to make some inroads on the Sauber driver. As Joel picks up a 3-second time penalty as well, so Joel's last lap seems to have been really scruffy. He's gone from bad to worse as he loses the lead, drops down to 3rd position, picks up a time penalty as well, so Joel starting to come under attack from Jamie here. As we go back down, we'll check in with Nicky and Scott, who are still going at it back for 5th and 6th position. So as always, Invictus throwing up some absolutely superb battles all around the grid. You don't have to see the battle for the 1st and 2nd all the time. We'll show you all of the battles up and down the grid. And as you can see, these guys having an absolutely classic battle over 5th and 6th position. Nicky looking much closer than he was 2 laps ago on Scott, and he's got to get it nice and tucked in behind the hand. So this looks like it might be his best option as that DRS flap does open. Scott goes defensive early. He's made his one move, so does Nicky decide on it? Or both cars lock up going into turn 1. He's going to get another go at it going down into turn 2 as Nicky opens the DRS once again. Oh, it just stays behind. Scott defending for his life in 5th position at the moment in that Sauber. As these two will have sweat pouring down their faces as Scott trying to look where he's going and look in the mirrors, and Nicky just trying to find a gap at every opportunity. As you see, oh, looks at the inside going into chicane. That would be very brave. It's not wide enough for 2 cars. Nicky's staying just behind. Just doesn't want to get caught in the dirty air, but there you see a little mistake there from Scott, who runs a little bit wide coming out of turn 9. And Nicky here, this is another good opportunity overtaking if you're close enough, but Scott staying in the middle of the racing line, so Nicky can't get anything done there, and he's just defending for his life at the moment. You can see just how much it seems to be holding up Nicky, who's going to be right up behind the Sauber once again. Scott goes defensive earlier in the line, makes that one move, so Nicky will have to dive down the inside if he wants to get the move done. He just misses the back of the Sauber, inches away from picking up front wing damage there. And it looks much closer this time. Does he make a move around the outside? It would be an absolutely superb one if he could. He doesn't quite get it done. These two giving the fans, as Nicky's going to get all out of shape, dirtying up those tyres. He's going to lose a little bit of time, so that's going to give Scott a bit of a respite there, sorry. As we'll go back up the front, we'll look at the lead battle as Mero D2 is now only 4 tenths of a second behind Game of the Best for the lead of the race, and it's the Sauber driver who's holding the Red Bull at bay currently. As you say here, Stifler 1980 had to make that pit stop, and so really unfortunate for Stifler, who was well in the hunt for a podium today and made that mistake going into the 2nd sector, I think it was, and unfortunately an early pit stop for him. Believe he probably would have, he's put on a second set of super soft, so didn't think that mediums would last the end, as this looks like a really good opportunity for Mero here to look at the outside of the Sauber. Gamer just holds his line. Mero's going to go for the up and under. Doesn't quite get the power down in time, but does he look to launch it down the inside going into turn 2? Gamer leaves the space for him, but he doesn't make the move. Gamer having to really hold on at the moment from the Renault. It's Nicky and Scott once again. Nicky looking at the outside. Does he get it done? No, Scott's going to just about keep it, as these two still going at it. So almost 10 or 11 laps. These two have just been nose to tail. We'll go back up once again. We'll check in with the guys at the front. The closest battles we've got on circuit at the moment. Craig is also within 7/10 of a second of Mike, as Nicky does get the move done on Scott, but it's Mero that we're sitting on board with 0.3 of a second behind Gamer. Scott currently sitting 0.4 of a second behind Nicky. Wants to get that move done, or well, Scott did look like he was slightly holding up Nicky. Do we see Nicky start to stretch that lead? It's now out as Gamer jumps into the pit lane and Mero decides to follow him in. Now, do they both get it slowed down in time for the pit lane limiter? They do, so it's going to be a race of pit crews at the, or with this. We'll see Mero's going to come in a little bit earlier. His pit stops earlier, and it's soft tyres on for Mero as Gamer the best. Equal or exits as well. Who's got the best exit when it comes to the pit lane? So it's about neutralised. Two good stops there for the Sauber team and the Red Bull team, and it looks like Mero wasn't willing to give Gamer any chance of having an undercut and having a quicker outer lap. And these two luckily got out in turn 2, so won't be useful there for those brand new tyres. And we'll see if they... Yeah, so they both went for the soft tyre there. As you can see, Joel also came in and made that stop, and Scott also came in and made a stop. So a couple of the guys looking at the undercut, as Mike and Craig battling out, and we've not really watched much of this battle so far. We've kind of stayed with Nicky and Scott and Mero and Gamer, but these two have been joined at the hip throughout the majority of this race as well. Two very popular races, as Craig's going to go deep into turn 12 there. Craig will be looking at a decent haul of points. Unfortunately, hasn't been able to race, or hasn't picked up any points due to or being away, and also a non-finish in China. So hasn't picked up any points since he came in 8th position in Britain at Silverstone, and then before then it's not been the best of seasons for Craig. He's only sitting on 17 points at the moment, so definitely on the lookout for some good points today. We'll look here, it's Joel who's now starting to look at the back of Mike. Mike's yet to stop in the Ferrari. Joel has stopped, so we'll be using those new soft tyres and will not want to get held up by the Ferrari. Oh, he's just about going to get slowed down. He's going to be so much quicker, as Mike courteously pulls to the side and allows the Williams through. Realises that the Williams was in a different battle to him, and that Mike's battle is with Craig and it's not with Joel today, and he allows the Williams through. So hugely sportsman for Mike there, as Joel picks up a 3-second time penalty. So once again, Joel just making a brief error. As you can see there, the gap that everyone has to the leader. So Mero D2 sitting 0.6 of a second now, up to 1 second behind Gamer the best. Mero lost a little bit of time, was right up behind Gamer, but Gamer seemingly enjoying these new softer tyres. I say that, but Mero seemed to be doing slightly nicer when it comes to braking later for corners, and Gamer locking up very frequently, so will not be doing those tyres all that good at all. As you see, the fastest lap of the moment is Stifler 1980 on those super softs that he came in and put on, so it's 122.198 currently for Stifler. So he will be looking at a much different strategy to what everyone else is. It most likely be a 2-stop for him. You'll see him come in for the soft compound, I imagine, in around 6 or 7 laps time, as Scott picks up a 3-second time penalty for corner cut warnings. As you see here, the interval now 0.4, but just dipping under 0.4 per second. So Mero still right on the back of the Sauber, just hasn't been able to get the move done, as Mero goes a little bit deep going into turn 13. It's all about hooking up this final corner, getting that car straightened up as early as possible. Gamer runs a little bit wide, and that's allowed Mero to open up the DRS, and he's right in the slipstream of the Sauber. He looks like to dive to the inside. We've seen this before. Gamer's defended very well, and he cuts off the Red Bull at the final moment. Mero just struggled to get the power down ever so slightly there, and it's allowed Gamer to maintain the position. It means that Mero wasn't able to launch it down the inside into turn 2. Gamer doing all he can to keep the Red Bull behind him. Of course, guys, if you are watching and if you have got it on in the background, feel free to leave any comments or ideas or anything you want to engage with in chat. I'm more than happy to have a chat with you and find out what you think, how the race is going, or if there's anything you think I've missed or you'd like to talk about, then feel free to get involved. And of course, we're not the only race today we're not the only race this week for Invictus. Tomorrow night we have got the Performance League, where you can join Malk and Craig, who will be back in the commentary box after Craig's period out, and they'll be also at the Hungarian. And then on Wednesday we have F1, F2 and F3 with some of the closest and most competitive racing you will find anywhere on Formula 1 esports, as we stay on board with Mero D2, who's 0.4 of a second behind Game of the Best here as they go down towards turn 1. Mero once again having a look to the inside of the Sauber, but Gamer just cutting off that apex to a perfect defensive drive, just letting Mero see that there's a gap, and then at the final moment just cut it off and just maybe putting Mero just out of his braking zone, and just ever so slightly having to brake a little bit sooner because he hasn't quite got the advantage on Gamer yet. Just hasn't had the ability to really throw it up the inside. Stifler 1980 currently sitting 0.7 of a second behind Mike, who's still yet to stop in 5th position. So Mike going long on those soft tyres that he started on. We'll look to go as long as possible and try and try and use a set of super soft, so Mike potentially very quick at the end of this race. You can hear there, we'll go on board with Mero as we sit here, and we'll go on board with him. And the onboard T-cam opens that DRS, puts it up into rich mix. Now he looks like he's close. He pulls out very early. This time it looks like Gamer doesn't quite close the door on him, but Mero just struggling to get the power down. Had a real opportunity there, and also goes a little bit deep into 2. Doesn't want to run into the back of Gamers. The worst thing you could do at the moment is he wants to keep it on the black stuff. Do not pick up any penalties. Currently Mero with a 3-second time penalty, so will be maintaining second even if he gets past. This Gamer a little bit twitchy coming out as they enter the slow chicane at turn 6 and turn 7. We got a yellow in sector 1, and it's Craig. Craig going very slowly out of turn 1 there. Mero and Scott has retired from the session, and he's with terminal damage, absolutely catastrophic damage there for the Sauber in the front left corner. Looks like he's gone off. Can't even tell where that is on the circuit, in sector 2 somewhere, so it may have been coming into turn 7, potentially coming 7 and 8 potentially. We'll go back on board with Mero, who's still looking at the back of Gamer. Once again pulls to the inside. Does he get it slowed down in time? Locks up the front left. It's all about getting the power down. Gamer having the better run out of turn 1 once again. And Mero going to have a look down the inside of turn 2 and just almost taps the rear end of that Sauber. Just going back, that's an absolute killer there for Boybed and no SB, so that Scott will be absolutely gutted with himself after picking up some really positive results over his first few races with IRL. Made a slight error as Mero looks to have got the move down, going into the chicane, and it's going to be really messy between the two. They do prove you can fit two cars, and Mero takes the lead of the race. And it was Gamer that made a slight mistake coming out of turn 5, and that allowed Mero to get up the inside into the chicane. Gamer was not going to let it go easily, and the two banged wheels coming out of turn 7, but it's Mero that's got the job done. He's finally got that lead that he's been after for lap upon lap upon lap, and what it means is it's now turn for Gamer to attack the rear end. And we know this Gamer runs wide coming out the final corner. It's not going to help at all, but Sauber seems to be very fast in a straight line today. His setup might be slightly different to the Red Bull. We'll see. Does Mero have the nerve to maintain the lead compared to the nerve he had to stay or to keep within his braking zone, as he runs a little bit wide coming out of turn 2, and that's allowed Gamer to get a run at him going into turn 3. And it would be a very brave move into turn 4 here, so Gamer's going to tuck him behind him. Now what Gamer just needs to do here is just make sure that he doesn't make any more mistakes. He doesn't want to pick up any unnecessary penalties whilst Mero's behind. But what has happened is Joel F520, after losing the lead earlier in the race, and obviously Joel, our pole sitter, is now starting to catch the top two. So Mero and Gamer, after having that battle that has been going on for well over 60-70% of this race so far, it means they've been holding each other up, and it's now allowing Joel to slowly creep up to behind the back of these two, as the Red Bull just keeping Gamer behind. Gamer taking a much tighter line coming into turn 14. Mero going defensive very early, but the Sauber is right in the gearbox of the Red Bull. Does he move to the inside? Mero covers the inside. Gamer looking at the outside. Is he going to look for the up and under? He doesn't. He stays to the outside as Mero looks like he might be under threat as they go into turn 2, and Gamer looks down the inside. Is there contact between the two? There's not. They're side by side going into turn 3, and it's a superb move there for Gamer around the outside of turn 3. A incredibly brave move there for the Sauber driver, and he retakes the lead from Mero D2, who's now got to do that all over again. And now, unfortunately for Mero, he's going to have a Williams in his mirrors that's going to be joining the party, and it's going to have a three-way battle for the lead of the race. You see here Mero still staying with Gamer, and he gets a better run out of turn 11 there as they go into turn 12, and Mero is going to get out the inside, and he's going to retake the lead from Gamer. So Gamer going to go back down the insides. We're going to have possibly a lead change once again. Oh, Gamer just saved himself from tagging the rear end, but this really has now brought Joel into play, as we've definitely got a three-car battle, and Joel's going to be right in the gearbox of Gamer, so both of them are going to get DRS on Mero. So Mero is potentially going to be a sitting duck for two cars, as Gamer looks at making a move, doesn't quite get it done, but Joel also looking at the back of the Sauber, and Joel all over the back of Gamer, and he's looking to go around the outside of turn 2. Doesn't quite get it done, so these three still with each other, and Joel with that absolutely fantastic lap in qualifying. Mero D2 joined him on the front row of the grid. These three quite comfortably the quickest guys today, almost 8.5 seconds ahead of everyone else, and just having an absolutely superb battle throughout the entirety of the race. Mero and Gamer have just been at each other the entire time. And currently, Gamer the best would be picking up 10 points, although Mero does have that time penalty, so that's something that Mero has to look at. He's stretched out a little bit of a lead, but with the DRS now coming into use once again, that's probably going to come back down. It does back down. He's sitting third in the championship on 46 points. He's only raced in 4 races this season, and he's been the winner of 3 of them and second on the other one. So just like Betrayer in the F3 League, if he doesn't finish first or second, he doesn't seem to finish. So Gamer will be looking at maintaining that record and potentially looking his 4th consecutive win and taking the lead of the championship heading into Bahrain next week. So they all 3 get slowed down just in time for the chicane there, and it's an absolute cracking battle for the 3 of them. As Gamer runs wide, that's going to allow Joel real impetus at coming at the Sauber into the 3rd sector. Now, does Joel have a look at the Sauber going into turn 11? It looks like he may have done, but he doesn't quite get the move done. We've seen Gamer, real vociferous defender, and you have to really throw the car in to get it up into position. And Gamer running wide once again. That's going to allow Joel a really good run as Gamer goes defensive early onto the inside line, but Joel's going to have DRS and look to go around the outside, but luckily Gamer's also got the DRS on Mero and he's going to maintain position but Joel does the up and under. Who gets the power on earlier? It's going to be side by side heading down into turn 2. So still battle heading around turn 2, and they're going to be side by side into turn 3. Still side by side through 3 corners. Turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. You can't go side by side through here, boys. And it just Gamer that maintains his position. As Joel just looks to put it up the inside going into turn 5, but wasn't quite the room there. And this is allowing Mero just to eke out that lead. And now up to 1.2 seconds. And the longer these 2 behind battle with each other, the more Mero can pull out that lead. And he needs 3 seconds if he's going to make or get rid of this penalty that he's going to be getting at the end of the race. Joel still right on the back of Gamer. This Gamer gets a little bit out of shape coming out of turn 13. Out of turn 14, Gamer's been running wide but gets a little bit better coming out of the final turn there, and means that Joel doesn't quite have the run on him that he did last time. But does he look at a late lunge? Gamer leaves him in space but shuts the door right at the last moment, as he was doing to Mero earlier in the race, and that compromises Joel's run ever so slightly, meaning that it's just allowed Gamer just to stretch out half a second lead, just make up around 0.2 of a second on him. Now, as I was saying before, guys, as Joel picks up a second time penalty, so nightmare there for Joel. Ran wider coming into turn 4, picks up another. As we see, we lose Craig 8728, who's also lost the front right hand tyre, it looks like, coming out of the chicane at turn 7. So must have hit the curbing at turn 7 and just lost the car and put the Red Bull into the barrier. And unfortunately for Craig, on his return in the No Assist Championship, it's a 0-point score and a DNF for the Red Bull driver, who will not be happy, and the Scotsman will be cursing away in the cockpit as he realises that he gave up some potential points there with guys ahead of him with penalties. So Joel once again sitting just over half a second behind Gamer for second position. Mero up the front, lost his lead a little bit. He was up at just over a second and a half. It's now down to 0.6 of a second. So this seems to be, it might be a battle of who can look after their tyres when it comes towards the end of the race, because Mero D2, like I said, needs to stretch out that lead if he's going to nullify and avoid that penalty that he picked up earlier in the race. Game of the best. I don't believe I've seen anyone flicker up with any penalties so far. Of course, guys, this is not, like I said, this is not our only race of the weeks. We do have the Performance League tomorrow, F1, F2 and F3 on Wednesday, all streamed live on Twitch. So make sure you check out our social media handle on Twitter at InvictusRL, where all of the league information will be posted, and you can find your relevant commentators and their stream links where you can enjoy some absolute cracking battles like being shown off today. And you can be assured that this isn't a one-off. You will be seeing this every week, and with the guys here ultra competitive and really on the limit with no assists. It's just superb and just really impressive for some of these guys here. And Mero's lead currently down at just over half a second, so Gamer slowly coming back at the Red Bull driver. Now I am aware, guys, it does say down at the bottom, round 8 Japanese Grand Prix, but we are in Hungarian, in Hungary. Unfortunately, that is a graphical glitch, but please be aware we are in Hungary, and we are in front of the wonderful Hungarian fans here. As you can see, the Brazil flag flying there. But 30 minutes outside of beautiful Budapest, one of the cheapest Grand Prix that you can attend, as Mero picks up another 3-second time penalty there. You saw him run wide coming into turn 11 there, so another disastrous penalty for Mero, and this is really playing into the hands of Gamer. But yeah, so as I was saying, if you one of the cheapest Grand Prix on the F1 calendar, you can pick up a weekend ticket for this Grand Prix for just over 90 Great British pounds. So if you have the opportunity of going out there, it's a wonderful country, wonderful people, and you get to see some absolutely cracking racing. Mero stretched out his lead to about 9/10 of a second. So Gamer and Joel still within DRS of each other, so the battle is still going on, but not quite as aggressive as they were earlier in the stint. So maybe a little bit of fuel saving and conserving tyres at the moment, looking at later on in the race. And Mero, of course, with those 2 penalties now, he's going to be looking at trying to hold position, because he knows that potentially he may be overtaken by not only 1 but 2 people come the end of the race. And if you like the look of Invictus, guys, we do have our open lobby sessions for new starters on a Friday, or usually on a Friday. So if you are interested in joining Invictus Racing League, sign up at our website, invictusracingleagues.com. The admins will speak to you and invite you to an open lobby session where we can test your internet speed and make sure that your standard is suited for the correct league. But also, it's a fun and friendly environment with a superb community, and the guys in all of the leagues in Invictus are great fun to be around and provide some absolutely class banter. So you can definitely find a good home here. So if you are interested, check out our forum site at invictusracingleagues.com and send one of the admins a message, and they will get back to you. We are taking applications for the F1 2018 game, but we're always welcome to have guys into the end of this season of 2017 if you're willing to take up a couple of positions for the last few races to get ready for next season on the new 2018 game. We'll sit on board here with Joel V520. Was the pole sitter. Unfortunately made that mistake earlier in the race and dropped down to 3rd position, where he sits currently. Looking at the back of Game of the Best, Sauber, but Joel and Mero both with penalties, and Game of the Best I don't believe has had any penalties so far. So with 5 laps left to go, it's Game of the Best who's on course for his 4th consecutive win and 2nd consecutive win without actually finishing 1st on track. So not dominant for Gamer like we saw in the first 2 races in China and Canada, where he won by, well, China it was over 45 seconds, so not the dominant victories that we've seen before from Gamer. But it's consistency that gets points here, and fortunately for him, we don't tend to see that many mistakes from Game of the Best. As Mero stretched out his lead to 1.3 seconds, so not under threat at the moment. Joel starting to look at the back of Gamer once again in the Sauber. Just gets a little bit of the rear stepping out, coming out of turn 5. There is the guys not getting caught out on the curbing of the chicane like Craig did earlier in the race, unfortunately causing a DNF for Craig there. And we'll go down, we'll just ever so briefly just check over the rest of the grid. Jamie 6328 having a very quiet race at the moment in 4th position in the second Williams. And 5 seconds behind him you've got Nicky 9095, our current championship leader, who is set to lose that lead that he's held for the last 4 or 5 races. And then behind him you've got Stifler 1980 down in 6th position. So even though it's a bit of a shame for Stifler, who obviously had that moment earlier in the race and dropped right down and has been forced into a 2-stop strategy, will pick up 6th place currently, so some decent points. It's not the end of the world for Stifler, who's obviously missed last week's race, so we'll just be looking at getting that car to the finish. And we have Mike SI, who unfortunately after crashing out in qualifying sits in 7th place at the moment. So once again it's another points finish on the cards for Mike, hopefully, and he'll be glad to see some points coming into the Ferrari team as we head into the Gulf race in Bahrain. So we go back up at the front once again. We'll join up with this battle that's been going on as Joel right up to the back of Gamer now as he goes into turn 10 there. He's going to look into turn 11. Does he dive down the inside? No, he doesn't get it down. The Gamer just about looks it, but there you go. There is that penalty that they've been looking for, and Game of the Best picks up a 3-second time penalty. So is the pressure from Joel starting to take its toll as he kicks the rear end out coming out of turn 13? Now that does mean that it's 3 seconds. I believe that Mero and Joel both have 2 3-second penalties. So Joel really out of shape as he comes out of turn 1 there. Luckily just about keeps it in a straight line as they go round into turn 2. But Gamer with 3 seconds of penalties as Mike picks up a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. So Hungary can be pretty brutal when it comes to those time penalties, running out wide at turn 4, running over the curbing at turn 6 and 7, and running out wide at turn 11. Definitely the most regular places to see time penalties picked up. Joel fallen back to just over a second behind Gamer at the moment after almost losing control of the Williams coming out turn 1. As Jamie 6328 picks up another 3-second time penalty as well. So penalties now starting to build up with 2 laps left to go as the guys cross the line any moment. Well, Gamer's going to look to keep it on as Mike sets the fastest lap of the race of a 1:21 as Nicky 9095 picks up a 3-second time penalty. So penalties starting to roll in now. The guys just getting a little bit loose come towards the end of the race, and with 2 laps left to go they just want to keep that concentration and want to make sure that you keep the car in the black stuff, and you want to keep it pointing in the right direction as Gamer locks up both front tyres heading into turn 2. And it looks at the moment like Mero is going to hold on to take the checkered flag, but with those penalties, as Joel picks up another penalty, so that's definitely Joel locked in there for 3rd position at the moment. Unless one of the 2 in front of him have a moment, with 9 seconds of penalties built up, I think Joel would have given up in his chase for 2nd and 1st. Those tyres are probably right on the edge of giving up. This Gamer running out wide over in turn 11 as he has done, as Nicky 9095 for the 2nd race in a row has retired, and it's a front left by the looks of it. He's lost coming possibly into turn, or and the exit of turn 5 maybe. So unfortunately for Nicky, it's a disastrous end with 1.5 laps left to go. The McLaren driver puts it in the wall once again, as he did last week in Japan, and he's going to be picking up another DNF. So Nicky 9095, after some good results with a win in Mexico and a win in Singapore and a second place in China, with two retirements in 2 races. So is this championship challenge starting to fall off the rails a little bit, and with Game of the Best looking like he's going to pick up another win as they enter the chicane for the final time, as Joel looks to have sewn up 3rd place there. I don't think Jamie's going to have anything to do with the conversation when it comes to 3rd position. So it's going to be these 3 vying for the win, but with Mero's penalties and Gamer picking up only 1 to Mero's 2, I believe it will be once again checkered flag for the Sauber as Mero exits the final corner, and unfortunately for him it's the penalties that are going to get him, because he will take the checkered flag, but on the line it looks like it might be Gamer the Best that takes the win, but it's not. It is not. So Gamer must have picked up a penalty earlier in the race. So well, there we go. I obviously missed one. Gamer the Best comes in second, so Mero D2, after picking up his first podium of the season last week, picks up today's race win. So huge congratulations there to the Red Bull driver, who is just looks like he's still going on off for another lap. He's going that quickly and racing back to the pit lane to get on the top step of the podium, as Mero D2 picks up first and his first win of the season. Gamer the Best in the Sauber comes in second. Joel V520 with a credible third. Jamie picks up fourth. Stifler picks up fifth, and it's going to be Mike SI who's going to take sixth position, with Nicky, Craig, Scott and iMakers all retiring earlier in the race. So only 6 finishers tonight in the race, so not the best when it comes to mistakes and keeping on in the same or the right direction, as Mike crosses the line in the Ferrari, and he does, and it's Mike that picks up 6th position. So congratulations goes to Mero D2 for his first win of the season. His best result so far was last week, where he picked up a 3rd place in Japan, but before then it was a 4th position that he'd picked up. So Mero doing very well with his last 3 races, a 4th, a 3rd and a 1st. So he's going to put himself up on to 46 points. So currently he will be right up there with Game of the Best will be on 56 points. Nicky 9095 will be on 50 points. Chilled Nyland will stay on 49. Joel will be on 53 points. And Stifler will be up on 49 points. 49 points, sorry. So Mero putting himself into the conversation late stage for a late championship run, as Mero picks up the win with Game of the Best in second, Joel third, Jamie fourth, Stifler fifth, Mike sixth, and then we had the retirements of Craig, Scott, Nicky and iMakers, if my memory serves me correct. But a very good race there for Mero, who was involved in absolutely worldy of a battle with Gamer for the win, trading positions over and over again. It was Scott and Nicky who were also involved in a cracking battle between the two of them, but unfortunately for both of them, both retirees from the race. So some real close battling all over the grid today on the no assist race, or the IRL no assist championship at the Hungarian Grand Prix. So we can expect absolute barnstormer and some real fireworks as we head to the Gulf next week in Bahrain. Another circuit that is famed for high tyre deg and multiple strategies that can be used. Will we see guys go for the the long one-stop strategy where they'll most likely be on those medium tyres and or the slower pace, or do they go for a slightly faster two-stop strategy where they can be on the super softs twice? So will be very, very interesting to see what we get next week as we head towards the culmination of the season with only 3 races left to go. So with only Bahrain, the USA and Malaysia, some very tricky circuits that will catch out drivers, and it will be very, very interesting to see what we have in store for the rest of the season. But that's it for me for tonight. Thank you for joining me for the Invictus Racing League No Assist Championship. Make sure you join us tomorrow night for the Performance League with Malk and Craig in the commentary box, and then on Wednesday for F1, F2 and F3. Like I said, follow our socials on Twitter at InvictusRL. Check out our website invictusracingleagues.com. You can support and donate to us in any way you can, whether it be using our online store where you can pick up any Invictus branded merchandise, or if you just send us support through a follow or a retweet or any of our sharing any of our streams. That is all we ask for. It's always good to get us out there into the wider audience. So as I was saying, it's been good to have you. It's good to commentate. I'll be back next week in Bahrain. But for me, good night.